Anal. Every time you see that in Torah, it always means Lokadarka means anally. She's a three-holder.
How often do you see that in Torah?
Talks about it a lot. For instance,
Who else?
Well, there's a lot of things. It's like, can you kona an isha, right? We know that you have to be kona, that you can be, if you have sex, according to the Torah, there's 3 ways to acquire a woman, right? To marry, right? Via v'shtia. You can do it through kesef, shtar, and bia, right? Which
so
is
kesef is money, shtar is acquisition.
No, it's a
document.
A writ, yeah.
Writ, and bia is sex.
Sex, right? So the question is, what kind of bia? Does it have to be, vaginally, or can you take it, like, if?
What about orally?
Well, that would also, I think, would fit into Lokadarka here. But
so it's like sodomy.
But normally, when we say Lokadarka, it means anal.
Okay.
Okay, so. The answer is no.
I guess they didn't have much oral sex back then. Is there much oral sex discussion in the Talmud? Because it probably didn't come along until the movie Deep Throat.
Nobody had oral sex until like
no,
1960
some people did, but it wasn't
like
a pop culture phenomenon.
Nobody had oral sex until.
I mean, but they don't talk about oral sex very much.
Don't know. I haven't. I don't recall, but I do know that there's Korah in the Darim. It says in the Darim. It says in the Talmud in the Darim. I think it's like in 20, something like that. It says that however a man wants it, he can get it.
But I mean, did the rabbis even conceive of oral sex?
Well, there's a lot of different things that it says over there, right? And like however he wants his eggs prepared, he can have them. And it's like
over easy.
Over easy, scrambled, sunny side up, poached. You can have them in an omelet, right? And it's like clean talk. It's lush and nucky, right? You talked about there's a lot of talk about sex, right? You complain about that. Actually, the Torah goes out of its way sometimes to clean things up, right?
Much like this show.
Yeah, and it goes out of its way, but if you look at the commentaries, it's like anything he can do to her body. He can do, and like they don't have to be explicit, but like if he wants a blowjob, he can get it. They want to do 69.
I don't think they did blowjobs back then.
Well,
I don't think they did.
Wait a minute. There's actually a thing about oral sex. There's actually a thing about oral sex. The Rambam talks about it.
Really?
Yeah.
But this is like
the Rambam talks about
1,200 years later. I mean,
but the Rambam talks about oral sex. He says that it's fine. In fact. If the woman, you have a chiyuv, you have a requirement to get your wife off. You have to satisfy your wife. It's part of the requirement. It's part of the agreement when you get married. There's very few things that in a Jewish marriage that you agree to, right?
Right.
She has to bring you food, hot food,
right, and
prepare your house for you, right?
Right.
And the man has to do what? He has to get his wife off. It's a requirement. It's part of the marriage contract. And if he has to lick her down there for an hour, he has to do it. That's part of the marriage contract for a Jewish man. And that's why I think chicks is probably dig Jewish guys. Because they've been trained and ingrained that they have to go down.
Now, how unusual is it that the rapist falls in love with, like, the guy who, like, took her?
But this guy didn't rape her!
I know, but he, like...
But let's just pretend, right?
No, he seduced her. Like,
he seduced her. He loved her. They were into each other. There was nothing wrong here.
So it was very pure and sweet.
Yeah, he seduced her, and she's into him.
Expressed her feeling. What was Yaakov doing, thinking he could get away with living in Shechem? Like, he said he was going to Bethel. He told Esau that he was going to Seir. Now he comes, sets up his tent right in Shechem. Like, didn't he learn from Lot's example that you can't go living with the Goyim and like, oh, we're just going to live right next door here, I'm going to buy a fancy piece of land and we're going to live right there. Like, he should have been in Bethel, he should have been doing his own thing. You can't, like, live right next to the Shechemites and think, oh, everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be easy, I've suffered enough, now I can retire at Leisure World. Like, this is Leisure World. Shechem was known as Leisure World in Canaan. And Yaakov was like, oh, great, I'm going to retire at Leisure World. And everything's going to be easy. What was this guy doing there? Like, buying land there and, like, setting up camp and Yeah, I mean, you just can't go living right next to the Shechemites and not start assimilating to their values.
What's the next?
Oh, even more terrible than the offense against the person and dignity of Dina.
There was no personal. What? Can we stop with? It's like I talked to a wall here. She was not raped, and there is nothing.
She was seduced.
So what?
Normally, you go to the family and you ask. You don't seduce and then go to the family and say, "Oh, can I marry your daughter, the one I seduced already? She was great. I had her both vaginally and anally." And I really take delight in her. That's just not a Toradic way of going about romance. Like, is this the mistake that you made with your ex-fiancée?
Well, there's some truth to that.
Like, you finally come to the mother and said, "Is it okay if I marry your daughter, the one that I've had in the ways?"
I did not have that with her, but there is some truth to that. And what I learned is that you always go to the parents before you even talk to the girl. Go talk to the parents first.
But at least before you have anal with her.
No, definitely before anal. But I mean, even before you get engaged, man, you gotta talk to the parents, because there's no point in building up feelings for somebody, investing so much time and energy in a relationship when the parents aren't into it. It is not going to work.
Because, like, seducing this girl out in the fields, like, it's an assault upon the honor of Jacob's family, and it pollutes a moral environment. The entire community becomes infected by such wanton deeds.
Well, look at the language here. V'tate say Dina Bas Leah. Did you see that?
Yeah, daughter of Leah. Why doesn't it say daughter
because
of Jacob?
Because that's her daughter and not mine. We don't take Yaakov down in this. It's because it was the way of Leah to, like, hang out walking around at night.
See, sexual sins are not like other sins, because that's why we don't always do capital punishment on guys who walk in on their wives banging someone else and then they kill both parties. Like, it's like a crime of passion. So,
like in Texas, you're allowed to blow his head off.
So, like, sexual sins, it's like they have the power to, like, totally destroy a community. Like, one woman in a synagogue. Like, I have a friend who's a rabbi killer. She just seduces rabbis.
Oh, send her to me.
She gets them in so much trouble.
Send her to me.
I don't want her to tarnish your soul. She just, like, seduces rabbis, and she's just, like, rabbis just see her and they start sending her inappropriate text messages. And
do they send her pictures of their penis?
No. But, like, holy rabbis send her, like, "Oh, I've been dreaming about you, and it's such a pleasurable dream," and, like, all these, like, she's a rabbi killer. And so she could just, like, I remember she came into Pico Robertson the other day, and she said,
The other day?
There are, like, 10 guys here that I want to have relations with. I wonder which one I'll choose. And this is a woman who can cause a lot of disruption. And so one woman can just, like...
I hate women, man.
Just, like, sex is fire. It has the power to just, like, burn up and tear apart an entire community. And, like, we've got the Greek legends of when Helen was taken away, so they fought an ancient war. You can see it in the Brad Pitt movie.
Oh yeah, I watched that. It's like an opus, like 5 hours long.
Yeah, you take one woman away and have sex with her, and, like, it can cause all sorts of trouble. Like, people's daughters, like, if you got, like, a strong family and a good family where, people care about each other, and then you go seduce one of the daughters, not just vaginally but anally, like this guy, and then you say, "Oh, your daughter, I'm really fond of her, I want to get married now." It's just not going to fly in a lot of traditional cultures. We're just not into that. Like, it's like, "Oh, you had my daughter all 3 ways? Great, and now you want to marry her? Oh, you're really someone I want to make my son-in-law." This is not a traditional mating custom among Orthodox Jews, nor among, like, traditional Christians or traditional Muslims. Like, you try pulling that stuff in Saudi Arabia. Like, you go up to a father and say, "Hey, I had your daughter in all 3 entrances."
Yeah, and you know what they would do under Sharia law?
They'd kill the daughter.
They kill the daughter.
So you don't want to pull this stuff in traditional